Remember this dude? No? Well, me neither, but he's actually the one who's going to save the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe in Avengers 4. This guy is going to save the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe in Avengers 4. I could talk about Avengers 4 theories all day, but there's one in particular that I can't stop thinking about. It popped up on Reddit earlier this week from a Redditor who goes by the username Mushbert, and it's all about a character you might not even remember, Erik Selvig.
It's nice to be needed.
Erik Selvig isn't a superhero, he's a scientist. He showed up first in the Thor movies, he's also in Avengers, the first one where Loki hypnotizes him using the Mind Stone. And there's one scene in particular from Thor Dark World where we see Erik. This is after Avengers 1, and he's like a little out of it, maybe a little crazed. He's standing in front of this chalkboard and it's just covered in a jumble of scientific nonsense. Except maybe not. As this Redditor pointed out, a lot of the things that showed up on that chalkboard actually came true in Thor Dark World or even later on.
It's dangerous.
I'd be disappointed if it wasn't.
So this theory, which came from Redditor Mushbert, this is specifically about Thor Dark World, and one scene in particular where he's standing in front of a chalkboard, which you might not remember because Thor Dark World is a pretty bad movie. What's important about this chalkboard is that when you first see it, it just looks like a bunch of jumbly science nonsense. Maybe he's a little crazy, maybe the person who was in charge of making it for the movie just didn't really try that hard, but it turns out but it turns out that there were actually a lot of clues for future Avengers movies on that chalkboard. Starting with clues from Thor Dark World, like dark energy, which is right there on the chalkboard. They also mention a few things from Ragnarok, like Crossroads, which seems like it could be Sakaar, the trash planet. He even predicted Ragnarok, the destruction of Asgard, at the end of that movie. He wrote the words phase transition, which show up way later in a totally different movie, Ant-Man and the Wasp. All those seem to suggest that somehow Erik Selvig has some extra information, maybe just because he's a great scientist, maybe because Loki hypnotized him with the Mind Stone. But there's one more thing on that chalkboard that's really interesting, and that is Simonson's theory of relativity. So Simonson's theory of relativity doesn't exist. Simonson is a reference to Walt Simonson, who wrote a bunch of comics for Marvel, but the theory of relativity from Einstein does exist, and it helps explain how time travel could be possible. And if you're wondering why I'm talking about time travel, that's because a ton of theories and a lot of leaks suggest that Avengers 4 is going to be all about time travel and how our heroes use that to go back and stop Thanos before he can even do the snap.
Can you snap it? No, snap it. You mean like a snap.
So a couple days after this theory came out, something even crazier happened to confirm that it actually might really be true. And that was a book from Marvel that takes place in between Infinity War and Avengers 4, called Aftermath. The book focuses on two characters, Erik Selvig and his assistant Darcy, played by Dennings in the movies, and confirms that they're alive. First of all, that's huge because it means that Erik is actually around and he can do all these things that Mushbert thinks he will. But more importantly, the book also explains that ever since the snap, they've been focused on trying to undo the damage and figure out how they can, bring everyone back to life, which is basically setting up everything that this Reddit theory had speculated on. So Marvel is basically hinting that this theory is correct. So yeah, this book is totally canon, but more importantly, what do you think? Do you think this theory makes sense? Do you think it's just another weird Reddit theory, or do you think this is actually what's going to happen in Avengers 4? Let us know in the comments, tweet at me, and like this video, subscribe if you enjoyed this.